Very good evening to everybody, and welcome to your first session of the crash portion of the CLAT and ILET 2024, which is to be conducted in December 2023. For a lot of students who have attended my classes before, this will be a revision of all the major concepts and a lot of practice. And for those who joined late or are joining fresh, this would be a good introduction to all the basic requirements of the various topics in the entrance examination, which is going to be conducted in the month of December. Before I start with this session, I hope everybody has filled in the entrance examination forms for CLAT and ILET if you are planning to give both, right? So whoever is planning to appear for the CLAT in 2023, December 2023, I hope you have filled in the CLAT form. Whoever is appearing for ILET conducted by NLU Delhi for admissions in 24, examination in December 2023, I hope you have filled in the examination form for that. I believe Nirma University Law School has also started their application process. At least I saw the link today in the morning. Not many details are available, but I believe Nirma University would have started the application process for the Law University as well, because they take the CLATS course. So I'll send you the link. You can check the link and keep following it and fill in the details as and when it is necessary. So now that we are in the final phase of the preparation, I think this is a good time for me to talk a little bit about the examination. A lot of you are already aware of the examination, but still, it would be good to know the examinations, the CLAT and the ILET, the details about these exams, a little bit about the strategy that should be followed for the examination, and also what I would expect the aspirants to be preparing in the next couple of months, and then we'll take it ahead from there. So let me start with a basic introduction of the examination and talk about a little bit of preparation strategies for the same. Today's agenda, obviously, I'm going to introduce you to the CLAT of 3rd December, ILET of 10th December, the paper pattern, the expected syllabus. I will try to introduce you a little bit to the cutoff scores and ranks which happened last year, a little bit about the paper, the June 22, the December 22 paper, right? Because two examinations were conducted once the calendar changed. So both June and December. So the common law admission test, or CLAT, obviously, as you all know, is the national level entrance examination for admissions to the 24 national law universities, in which you have two versions of the examination. One is obviously the undergraduate examination, the UG version, which is the examination which you guys should be giving because that you are applying for the undergraduate course. Also, we have the PG or postgraduate version of the examination, but please be very careful while filling in the application form, because some students make the mistake of filling in the form for the postgraduate program, which is a program which is only for those who want to do an LLM, right? You guys are going to appear for the undergraduate exam. So please make sure when you're filling in the form that you're filling in the UG version, the undergraduate version of the examination. Now, obviously, the national law universities are those which take the CLAT score, all except NLU Delhi. And there are a lot of other private institutions and organizations which use the exam result for admissions. And there are also some organizations which take the CLAT score for job prospects, but that is obviously not for you guys. Okay. So the paper pattern of CLAT, it changed a few years back, and there again has been a major change this year. Originally, when it started, for many many years, it used to be a 2 hour paper with 200 questions, which got reduced to 150 questions in 2020, and yet again they have reduced it by 30 more questions. So this year, it's only 120 questions to be conducted across the 2 hours. That means you will have 120 multiple choice questions, each question of 1 mark, and there is negative marking in the examination of 1/4. So the biggest worry for many students is, sir, what is the negative marking in the paper and what should be our strategy for a paper which has negative marking in it? So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, what happens in a negative marking paper, how it can affect your performance, and what technically should be a strategy in such papers. Okay. Now, The overall number of questions has gone down, but the percentage wise weightage of each of these sections has pretty much remained constant across the years. So you have English language, which is 20% of the paper. So accordingly, we can expect 23 to 25 questions in this section. Current affairs, including GK, is 25%, one fourth of the paper, so about 28 to 32 questions. Legal reasoning, again 25%, so 28 to 32 rough questions. Logical reasoning is 20%, so 23 to 25 questions. And quantitative techniques or maths is 10% of the paper, so we can expect some 10 to 12 questions in the entire paper. And for those who are going to appear for the IELTS also has made changes. Last year, it changed the way it is marking the sections. Originally, they used to have 5 sections: English, Maths, Reasoning, GK, and Legal, with all these sections except Maths being 35 marks each and the Maths section being 10 marks, bringing it to a total of 150. Now they have done away with individual sections for logic, legal, and maths. All of the 3 sections are combined into a single section. So now you simply have 120 minutes, one fourth negative marking, with the first section being English with 50 questions, current affairs and GK being 30 questions, and logical reasoning being of 70 questions. But like I mentioned, logical reasoning will include legal and it may include questions of mathematics, which can have data interpretation as a part of it. Okay, now let's take a look at the general syllabus for all these examinations. Now, please bear in mind, it is not like school examinations where you have a very clear-cut syllabus, topics and everything. Entrance examinations, especially the CLAT and IELTS, have given a very generic syllabus. But across over the years, because we have seen the papers, we more or less know what to expect in the exam. So, according to the official website of the CLAT itself, you will be having passages of reading comprehension in the English section. The size of these passages is expected to be about 450 words, and it could include anything like fiction, non-fiction, and the average speed they expect you to read and understand the passage is about 5 to 7 minutes. So each passage will have a set of questions, and if history is anything to go by, normally the 450 word passages of reading comprehension have about 5 questions each. And these questions are designed to test whether you can read and understand what is being discussed in the passage, whether you can understand the arguments which are being made in the passage, whether you can understand the different viewpoints which are expressed in the passage, the different types of reasoning questions which can be asked based on the English passage would include drawing inferences and conclusions, and your ability to summarize the entire content of the passage. Also, additionally, you could have comparing and contrasting of arguments or viewpoints, and finally, vocab based questions where you might be asked simply the meaning of a specific word or a phrase as it is used in that particular passage. Now, GK and current affairs. Starting 2020, GK current affairs has significantly changed in CLAT as compared to any other examination or even the previous editions of CLAT itself. Instead of simple one-liner questions, CLAT now gives you a passage again of roughly 450 words, and in that you are required to answer questions. But understand that it does not mean that it is like reading comprehension where the answer is hidden in the passage itself. Many times we have come across passages in the actual CLAT paper which can be answered even without reading. For example, if there's a passage and there are 5 questions, sometimes they may give you such questions where if you know the topic, you will be able to answer every single question without even reading the passage. And if you do not know that particular topic, then reading the passage will be of no use because the questions will not be direct. So, what is the preparation to be done? Nothing different. It requires you to read a lot of general knowledge and current affairs, especially of the past 1 year, and have a quick reading speed. A good strategy for this particular section is to first read the questions which are given. If you think that you will be able to answer the questions even without reading the passage, then you can just go ahead and answer them and save time reading the passage, right? Or if you're not very confident, then you can go through the passage in a quick format, in a hasty format, just to make sure that you're not missing out anything. But supposing on reading the after reading the questions, you feel it is possible to answer the questions if you have some passage based information, go for it. Otherwise, there's no sense in wasting a lot of time if it is going to be a futile exercise, if it is not going to get you any marks. So obviously, GK current affairs requires you to practice reading a lot of material. Now, what is the most important GK or current affair topic which somebody should be focusing on? So, according to the past trends, according to my experience with various entrance examinations, I suggest that the 3 months preceding the examination are to be considered as the most important timeline. So, considering that our CLAT, IELTS are all in the first few days of December, I would say November, October, and September would be the most important timeline for current affairs. So once you are thorough with November, October, and September, then pay attention to the 3 months preceding that, which means August, July, and June. And once you're confident with that, then again go back 3 months, which means May, April, and March. So remember, go in installments of 3 months, starting with the last month. And obviously, November has not even occurred. Most of October is yet to occur. That means you are in pretty good space. You have to revise maximum of September and the 3 months before that, and then keep up with the daily news of the current affairs of what is actually happening in real time, and your work is mostly done. So the 6 months before the examination most important, with maximum importance to the 3 months just before, and relatively you can go easy on the prior 3 months, but these 6 months you absolutely need to have covered. Okay, now legal reasoning, and those who have attended legal reasoning with me before have more or less understood that it is not about knowing the actual law. It is just being able to understand what the author is trying to convey in the given passage and answer, which means it is nothing more than reading comprehension with a legal flavor. However, having said that, I will be going through the basics of three main topics: contracts, torts, and criminal law in these sessions in the evening, so that when you are facing a passage and questions of legal aptitude, you should know what exactly is the kind of mentality that you should be keeping when you are answering those questions. So legal reasoning again is passage based, 450 words passage, and very explicitly the instructions say that the passages may relate to fact situation or scenarios involving legal matter, public policy questions, or moral philosophical questions. Most importantly, you will not require any prior knowledge of law, right? It does not need you to remember, memorize various sections and articles. Absolutely not. However, you will benefit from a general awareness of contemporary legal and moral issues to better apply the general principles or propositions. So, the reason why we will do exercise some basic theoretical portions of law and practice examples is that you understand how exactly are certain things to be interpreted and how you can apply it while selecting the right answer. But having said that, CLAT IELTS do not require you to have knowledge of law which is mugging in nature, right? So again, identifying and inferring the rules and principles which are given in the passage, applying the rules to situations, and understanding how a change in the rule can change the answer, right? We'll be practicing questions. You'll get a very good idea of how exactly this needs to be done. Okay. Now coming to logical reasoning. CLAT logical reasoning is passage based, short passages of about 300 words, which means that you will mostly be having verbal reasoning. IELTS, on the other hand, is not restricted to verbal reasoning. It can have questions from analytical reasoning, things like puzzles, syllogisms or deductive reasoning is a favorite question often asked in the IELTS, so on and so forth. Right? Logical reasoning, again, like reading comprehension in a shorter form, wants you to be able to identify arguments, premises, conclusions, analyze patterns, so on and so forth. Right? Most of logical reasoning in CLAT is just a slightly modified version of reading comprehension. IELTS, on the other hand, will have a few topics of analytical reasoning, but which topics you can never be sure. Okay. Mathematics, the most scoring section for some students, a bugbear, a pain in the bottom for some. But believe me, mathematics, as asked in CLAT or IELTS, is not at all difficult. It is basic funda of 8th, ninth, and 10th standard, right? So you will be given information in the form of a passage, it could be in the form of a chart, it could be in the form of a graph. All you have to do is understand the question properly, apply basic funda of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, averages, percentages, and ratio proportion. And believe me, it's absolutely possible to score 100% marks. It may be just 10 or 12 marks in the overall scheme of things, but still 10 or 12 marks may make a huge difference. Okay. Now, the most important part, and many I hate this part. I don't like this. But still, many students ask, sir, exam में कितने marks आने चाहिए? What should I score in an examination so that I get into an institute? Okay. Now, let me tell you something. Scores are not a good indicator of which institute you can be aiming for. And I'll tell you why. The reason is the difficulty level of paper is not constant, right? Some year the paper might be very easy, leading to high scoring marks. Sometimes the paper may be tough and you might get a low score. What is more important, more relevant, is that you identify the rank at which certain universities can get you an admission. So here I have put up for the past the score, the ranks of past 3 years, where OR, it stands for the opening rank, and CR stands for the closing rank. So for 21, 22, and 23, I have put at what rank the admissions opened in that particular year and what was the last rank which got admission in that particular year. Please note, all the data which I'm putting up is only for the general category. That means it does not take into consideration reservations. It does not take into consideration anything like SC quota, ST quota, PWD quota, domicile reservation, women's reservation, sports, defense. None of the quota reservations are being considered. I'm just putting up the general category information on the screen. So as you can see, NLS Bangalore traditionally has been the top choice, right? So in 23, around rank 114 was the last rank. But that does not mean all students from rank 1 to 114 went into NLS Bangalore. No, there could be many students, some students in between who did not opt for it. Anyway, so Nalsar, the highest ranking student was at 25 and it stopped at 177. Kolkata 136 to 260, Bhopal 186 to 463, Raipur 481 to 805. Then Jodhpur, I'm only now going to talk about the closing rank. So in 23, Jodhpur went at 383, Lucknow 749, Gandhinagar at 462, CNLU Patna at 1541, Patiala at 1307. Right now, I only put some 10 institutes. But still, if somebody wants to know what was the score vis-a-vis the rank, at what score can I get the rank? Then last year's score range was available. Remember, last year was a 150 mark paper. So the All India rank 1, if you want to understand this particular information, then in each table, I have put the range of the rank in the third column. The second column would give you the score range in a 150 marks paper. And the first column, predicted score, is how much proportionally that score would translate if it is a 120 mark paper, which means an All India rank 1 would be expected to get somewhere from 100 to 105 if going by past last year's trend you are rank 1. The second and third ranker could be anywhere between 96 to 100, then 92 to 96, and so on. So as you can see, there is a huge gap between the top scorers. But as the scores come down, the number of students in our particular range is extremely high, right? For example, then we come down 10 to 19, about 10 people in 80 to 84, then 20 to 57, about 25, 30 people, then 58 to 173, almost 120 people in that range, and so on and so forth. And I have gone till about rank 2318 because that is the total number of general category seats. Not exact number, but round about that many general category seats you have, which means that if you get a score of 56 to 60 in a 120 mark paper in of CLAT, then you may stand a chance of getting a general category seat, right? In one of the 24 NLUs. Again, I don't mean a top NLU, I mean any one of the 24 NLUs. So if you're a general category student and you want admission into at least one of the 24 NLUs, then you have to expect to be able to score 56 to 60, provided the paper is of exactly the same caliber as last year. If the paper is exactly of the same type as last year, the same difficulty level, and the students attempting the paper are also more or less of the same level as last year's lot, then we can expect you to get a seat if you score 56 and above in 120, right? But obviously, these are all pure predictions. The score can be anywhere up and down, and this does not take into consideration anything like quota and reservations. Okay. Now let's talk about the December paper. And remember, the December paper of 22 was pretty much same in pattern and structure as the June paper of 22, which means English, there were 6 passages with 5 questions each. GK Current Affairs had 7 passages with 5 questions each. Legal had 8 passages with 5 questions each. Reasoning, 6 passages with 5. And maths, 3 sets with 5 questions each. So, in total, the paper had 30 passages, and each passage had about 5 questions, making it a total of 150 questions. Proportionally, this year, we expect there to be fewer passages, obviously, because the number of questions has been reduced to 120. So, assuming a 5 question set, we can expect 24 sets to be asked. So, if 24 sets are to be answered in 2 hours, that means you get roughly 120 minutes for 24 sets, which means 5 minutes per set, right? So, test taking strategies is something that we are going to talk about. Many students have come to me and said, I'm not able to improve my mock scores, or I'm pretty stagnant at a particular level and I don't understand how to go ahead. So I'm going to talk specifically about test taking strategies and paper analysis if time permits. The first and most important thing which I have mentioned to many students, in fact every student who has ever come to me for help with analysis and strategy, is time allocation. Your biggest enemy in the paper is time. Somebody once very famously said that if you are given unlimited amount of time, then anybody can score 100% in this paper. With unlimited amount of time, you can easily score a great score. But what you're expected to do is score the maximum amount possible in a limited amount of time. So the first and foremost thing that you need to start working on is your time. Time is often considered by students only when they are attempting a mock. Otherwise, if they are practicing, if they're doing exercises, they never keep an eye on time, which is a bad strategy. Ideally speaking, every time you sit to do any sort of practice, be it an exercise from your study material, be it an extra exercise that you have sourced from somewhere else, make sure that you set a time limit for yourself and push yourself to complete the exercise within that time. And it's only with regular practice of time that you will gain that sense of urgency and you will be able to come up with the minimization of time strategy. For example, while reading a passage, if you are forced to complete reading and answering the 5 questions of a 450 word passage in less than 5 minutes, you will realize that you sometimes can skip certain words in the passage. You can avoid rereading certain things and still make sense of it. So, all these personalized strategies will work only if you do a lot of practice and do so while keeping an eye on time. So, time allocation is your number one thing in strategy. Second is your order of attempts. Now, a couple of things which you need to consider when you are deciding the order in which you want to try the section. There is a category of students who are often very uh, fresh in the beginning of the paper, but once they start attempting questions, they start becoming tired, and by the time they reach the end of time, they're more tired than they were at the beginning. Now, for such students who are not able to maintain the same level of freshness of mind, the strategy that you should attempt is start with the toughest section first. It could be any section for you. The idea behind this strategy is you should attempt the toughest section for you when your mind is at the freshest. Because tackling difficult questions obviously requires a fresh mind. So if you're somebody who keeps getting tired throughout the paper, start with your toughest section, right? And then start moving on to progressively easy ones. So by the time you reach the end of time, even if you're very tired, you will be left with the easiest questions, which you hopefully should be able to solve even with a tired brain. Of course, if you feel that with a tired brain, I cannot solve anything, then the strategy is not going to work. But if you feel that even with a tired brain, there are certain types of questions which I can solve, then start with the tough section first and keep on moving to an easier one so that your brain matches the quality of the questions. There is another strategy for people who get panicked with time. For example, I have known students who start attempting the paper, but then midway through the paper, they feel, oh, I have not attempted enough questions. So much of the paper is pending. I'm falling short of time. I'll not be able to complete it. For such students, my advice is start with your fastest section first. What do I mean by fastest section? There are certain sections which may not require too much of time from you. For example, if you take a look at the GK current affairs section, sometimes you face a passage which does not require too much of reading. You can answer the questions with hardly any reading of the passage. So a GK attempt might actually be faster than any other. So, or for somebody, maths may be a very simple section, right? They may be very quick at calculations and they can easily crack a set in the minimum time. So, start with the fastest section. The rationale behind this strategy is when you start with your fastest section, then in the initial few minutes of the test, you will have marked many answers on the OMR sheet, and that would sort of give you a confidence boost that yes, I am in a comfortable position because I have solved many questions. If you start with a section which is tough and you are not able to answer many questions, then you might get depressed seeing the number of bubbles you have created on the OMR sheet and think, oh, too much of time has gone and I'm not able to answer. So this strategy is for those who are fighting against time or who lose their confidence or panic a bit. Start with the easy section so that you build up your confidence. Now, I have seen many students start a section and attempt every single question of that section before they move on to the next one. Now, there is nothing wrong with it, but what many students don't realize is that there is nothing in the paper which says you have to attempt the complete section before moving on to the next. So, in the former pattern of the paper, when there were different type of questions, I would split my sections into different components. For example, in the English section, there used to be small questions which were vocabulary or grammar based, and there used to be big questions, ones which are reading comprehension based. So in the first round of attempts, I would simply attempt the vocabulary and grammar questions, one liners, and go to the other section and again attempt a short question and so on, and then come back to the English section and attempt the longer questions based on reading comprehension. Now, while CLAT may not be of the same pattern and every single question of CLAT may simply be passage based, that does not mean that you have to keep on attempting the same section before moving on to the next. So again, here analysis will help. Certain students, they feel that if I keep doing the same type of question and again, then I get bored and I find it difficult. So for those questions who want variety, you can maybe attempt two passages of a particular section, and then if you feel you're getting bored, jump on to another section, attempt a couple of passages from there. The only downside to this particular strategy is that you need to be very careful in examining which particular question number you are attempting and marking it properly on the OMR sheet. I've seen students making this mistake. They would attempt first passage questions 1 to 5, then decide to jump on to the question set 21 to 25, solve those 5 questions from 21 to 25, but by mistake, when marking them on the OMR sheet, simply mark them from question 6 to 10. Right? So if you mismark something on the OMR sheet and CLAT insists that you mark the OMR with a pen, once you have put a pen mark on a particular question, you cannot change it. In mock tests, I have seen many students make them they fill in a question wrongly and then they decide, oh, I want to change the answer, so they put a cross mark over it and bubble another. Do you know it does not make any difference? You still will end up getting negative marks in that, right? Crossing out an option and marking another option for the same question makes no difference. In fact, if more than one question is circled, it will automatically assume it had to be a wrong answer. So if you have made the mistake, just leave the question and move ahead. Do not try to do anything on the OMR sheet. You cannot do anything, right? Okay. So coming back to order of attempts, for if you feel you are getting bored with a section, you can always jump between passages. But then there are other students who feel that if I keep on doing questions of one type, then I build a rhythm and it helps me move faster. So if you are that kind of student who can build a rhythm and pace when doing the same type of questions, then it would make sense for you to complete the particular section before moving on to the next. Again, the bottom line remains that you just need to identify what are your own strengths and weaknesses. You need to identify what strategy works the best for you and then apply it to maximize your score. Okay. Now, post-test analysis is again of huge importance, and I've been talking about this in detail to many students these past few days, and I've been very surprised to understand that not many students are doing the proper analysis of all the mocks which they've already given or even the practice exercises that they are doing. So let me take this time to introduce you to proper analysis of mocks and how you are supposed to do them. Now, what is a mock test? A mock test is a simulation, a model test paper of the actual paper. You attempt the mock paper under the same circumstances, under similar conditions of the actual test. Once you give the paper, once you submit the OMR sheet, it is checked and your scores are given to you. You have access to the question paper, you have access to the answer key. Once you have got the answer key, your analysis of the paper should be as follows. First step, you would have marked certain questions wrongly on the paper, right? For example, question 1 answer was option A and you ended up marking option B on the paper. So first pick up every single question that you have wrongly marked on the answer sheet and ask yourself this question. Why did I get this question wrong? And there could be multiple reasons. The worst reason is you solved the question correctly and simply made a silly mistake in circling the OMR. You knew the answer was A. You correctly solved it as A. But when marking it on the OMR sheet, somehow you ended up marking B. And believe me, this is a very, very common mistake which happens. You need to identify, are you making this mistake frequently? If yes, it means you are not attentive enough when marking the OMR sheet, and you need to force yourself to double check that you are marking the correct answer against the correct question number. I know people who have ended up marking one question ahead. They would have solved questions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and ended up marking questions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the paper. So, such silly mistakes also are an indicator that you need to be careful. The second reason why you got a question incorrect could be that you did not understand the question properly. Many times I've seen people asking me, why is this answer incorrect? And when I ask them to just read the question carefully, they realize they have not read the question properly. Many times the word not, except, such words are used. For example, which of the following words do not mean the same as, or all of the following are mentioned in the passage except. So if you fail to read one small word like that in the question, you obviously end up marking the wrong answer. So that's a mistake in understanding and reading the question. If you find that you have made this mistake frequently, again it means you're not paying attention while reading the question. Make sure you do so. A third reason why you could have got a question wrong is because you did not know how to solve it. You ended up solving it using an incorrect technique, right? So that means all you need to do is make your theoretical knowledge of that particular topic stronger. Practice more questions of those type, and you will be able to get it right the next time. So that is your analysis of incorrect marked answers. The second category of questions would be those questions which you did not attempt on the paper. Many students do not do analysis of these questions. They simply check the wrong answers and move ahead. But in proper analysis, you need to analyze those questions which you have not marked on the OMR sheet. Again, there can be multiple reasons why you have not attempted a particular question. Most common reason, you simply did not have enough time. You ran out of time before you could even read that particular question. If this is happening frequently, then you just need to be fast. You need to keep an eye on time and push yourself to spend less time in reading and answering the questions. Second, you read the question, but you were not able to understand what the question was, and hence you made a conscious decision to leave it. Again, that means you just need to work on understanding language better. Third, you were able to understand the question, but you were not sure of which option to mark. You were able to eliminate some of the answer choices, but you were stuck between two, and you did not want to take a risk of getting negative marking by marking the wrong answer. So you consciously decided to leave that question. Well, in that case, it is a good strategy. I would say if you are not able to eliminate all but one options and are stuck between two or more, and you then consciously but quickly decide that I do not want to do this question, then that is absolutely fine with me. Finally, if you have read a question and you have decided that during my practice, I have discovered that I always make an error while solving this type of question. So let me not take a risk in the exam. I will not attempt it at all. I will not waste time at all. I will move ahead. In the actual examination, great guns. But during mocks, this is a good time for you to identify that one particular type of question is giving you trouble, which means time to work on strengthening that particular topic, practicing that topic a lot. So the incorrect and not attempted questions definitely need an analysis like this. However, we are not done with our analysis. Questions which you attempted in the paper and got right also need to be thoroughly analyzed. And believe me, guys, These are the questions which have given maximum trouble to students due to failure of analysis. How did you get a particular question right? Right? The worst thing is, sir, tukka mara aur lag gaya. And these are the dangerous questions. They are your enemies. What happens when you bluff your way on the mock paper? Right? You simply take a random guess and mark something on the paper. And if luck is with you and you get that question right, it is actually doing you a disfavor. Because when you sit with the answer key and when you're checking your answers and you see that you have got that answer right, most of us do not remember whether we bluffed our way, tukka mara tha ya actually solve kiya tha. We conveniently forget that we never understood this question properly. We just took a random guess. But because we have got the answer right, we think we know this type of question, we don't need to practice it, and we move ahead, leaving it a weak spot. That's why I am strictly against taking random tukkas in the mock papers. If you take an educated guess, that's a different matter. But please don't do random tukkas, because if you get it right, then during analysis, if you are that sort of a person who does not do analysis of the correct questions, then it will remain your weakness, but you will be misled into thinking that this is my strength. So, one, correct question, if you got by tukka, it means you still need to work on it. Second, you properly solved that question and got the answer correct. However, even this requires an analysis of time. How much time did you take to solve that particular type of question? If you got a math set correct, 5 questions, 5 on 5, but it took you 12 minutes to crack that set, believe me, it is not worth that time, right? 5 marks in 12 minutes, where you could have attempted some other section and maybe got more marks, right? So if you are getting it right but are taking too much of time, it still means it is not your strength. You still need to practice more and make sure that you bring down the time required to solve that type of a question. It is only after you have thoroughly analyzed all 120 out of 120 questions on a mock CLAT, or 150 out of 150 questions on a mock IELTS, that you will be able to tell that yes, I have done proper analysis. All the incorrect questions, all the not attempted questions, all the correct questions. Rough statistics tell me that a 2-hour paper needs a minimum of 6 hours to do proper analysis. 3 times the amount of time is usually required if you are thoroughly analyzing your performance. So believe me, guys, if you are doing this sort of an analysis of every single question and diligently noting down all your observations, you will be able to identify what are your strong points, what is your strong subject, what are your strong topic areas, which are your weak areas, how much time you're taking. And once you have all this data in your hand, the strategy that you must be using to maximize the score becomes pretty much obvious for you. But if you have not done this analysis, please start doing so. Giving 50, 70, 100 mocks but not analyzing them properly is of no use. I have known students who have given barely 7 to 10 mocks, but have analyzed each one of them to such an extent that they had their perfect strategy in hand while attempting the actual paper, and they cracked it with flying colors. So believe me, a 7, 10, maybe a dozen mocks with 100% proper strategy is going to be way more useful than a whole bunch of mocks with zero analysis. Okay. Now, crucial thing, the study plan for the next couple of months that you have left. In fact, a month and a half, I wouldn't say 2 months, a month and a half. And if you take away all the holidays in between, we barely have a month's worth of time. So we obviously will be having our daily classes Monday to Friday, 7:30 to 9. Saturday's legal aptitude, we will be having the timings of 11 to 12:30, alternatively 5:30 to 7. And obviously, GK current affairs will be on Sundays 11:30 to 1, the usual time. But I've also arranged for a few GK revision classes during the regular week, mostly on Wednesdays. We'll be doing a lot of practice in these online sessions in the evening. But other than that, I also expect you guys to practice a lot, right? You will have access to a lot of mock papers. Please do give them, analyze them. You have the entire study material at your disposal. Go through them. I'll be uploading a lot of reading passages, reading comprehension passages, because most of CLAT is based on that on the app. Please do daily practice of these things and make sure you're updating yourself with GK and current affairs as well. Okay. I'll be putting up the schedule as well on the app so that you can know what session to be attending. But like I said, starting today, October 16th, first and second week, we have 3 continuous weeks. Then the fourth week, we'll be having 4 classes till November 9th. Starting from November 10th, we have our Diwali break. So November 10th to November 19th will be a Diwali break. We'll resume classes on 20th of November. So that will be 6th and 7th week. And 7th week, the last day will be Sunday, which will be the actual CLAT. Right? I'll be putting up a copy of the schedule on the app as well. So you don't need to worry about that. Okay. Now, before I start with a basic topic, we'll be doing a little bit of reading comprehension theory and practice. But before that, if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask on the Zoom chat. Put up your question on the chat. I'll give you 5 minutes if you have anything, and then we'll move ahead with reading comprehension. How can we know how much time we spent on a certain question? So, like I said, when you're sitting with an exercise, let us say you're doing a reading comprehension passage with 5 questions. So you should know, you should say, okay, I'm going to spend, you set a timer, right, of 10 minutes. If you're taking more than 10 minutes, then automatically you know you have to do it faster. That's why have the habit of wearing an analog watch. Guys, the exam will not allow you to carry smart watches. The exam will not allow you to carry even digital watches, and there will be no clock or watch in the examination hall, which means you will have to rely on your analog watch, kaante wali ghadi. So please start wearing a kaante wali ghadi and analog watch and learn how to constantly keep eyeing the time. Now, I don't mean you need to be accurate to the second, that I take 27 seconds to read it, I take 1 minute 14 seconds. No, but roughly you should have an idea that 5 minutes are up, 10 minutes are up, 15 minutes are up, which means regular practice keeping a watch on your wrist. Arya says, could you explain again how we are supposed to analyze the questions which we do understand but are not able to differentiate between the options? Okay, see, every practice exercise which I do, if it is in the multiple choice question format, I usually show you how I eliminate options. I just don't stick to one answer and say, okay, this is the right answer for this reason. I also try to explain why I eliminated the other options. For example, in legal aptitude, if you have attended any of the classes, right, which I'll be doing again, but I say that first, when you read the question, you should be able to understand whether the answer is yes or no. If you know the answer is yes, then all the options with no are eliminated. Then between the yes options, the one which matches the reasoning given in the passage should be the answer. The one which exactly answers the question which has been asked is the answer. Anything which contains extra information is wrong. And that's a good one. I'm going to, in fact, in today's session of reading comprehension, I will be showing you how deceptive answers are created by the exam setter. So that should also help you understand how to select between confusing options. Okay, Rakshit, mock question. Mock papers, the past papers have all been there. Of course, according to the schedule, you'll be having your weekly mocks. I'll also be putting up a lot of reading comprehension practice papers online. I believe I have a bank of, it's already there on the app, but not many people have accessed it. So I'm going to put it in a special folder and give you the location. So you will be getting access to a huge bank of those questions, which will take care of practically every type of question, passage based questions. Right? Everybody with me so far? Okay. So, because some of you did ask me how to uh, get between questions, confusing options. So, I believe the session now on reading comprehension is actually the best session for understanding that. Shalom. Let's take a look at it then. Okay. So, because most of the passages, whether it is English, legal, or reasoning, they're all passage based questions. So these strategies should work for all of them, right? The strategies that I'm going to talk about, the analysis, everything I'm going to talk about will definitely work for all these different types of questions. Okay, just a moment. Just putting up the. Okay, bear with me for some time when I put up the reading comprehension thing. Okay. So, reading comprehension questions. Everybody has done reading comprehension at school level, right? Where you're given an unseen passage and few questions based on that. So now this has become the main part of not only the verbal but every section in the CLAT. And CLAT passages are usually of 450 words, where you are supposed to read the passage and answer the questions that follow. And the questions are multiple choice questions, and the trick is often in selecting the correct answer. So obviously, two skills are required. One, you require a good reading speed, but also you need to be able to infer the content correctly, and the options also need to be inferred correctly, right? So remember that it is no longer a school level reading comprehension where the answer is directly given from the passage. एक क्वेश्चन को पढ़ा, मैचिंग वर्ड ढूंढा पैसेज में, उसी लाइन को चिपका दिया एंड वो आंसर है. नो, the question which is asked and the required answer may not have the same language as used in defining it in the passage. That means synonyms, idioms, and phrases might often be used, and hence a knowledge of these things is also essential. Now, there is no fixed syllabus on where the content can be from. Passages could be based on science, history, philosophy, geography, economics, literature, anything. So that's the reason why repeatedly I have kept asking students to read all different types of content. Now, let's understand the types of questions which are asked and what are the different things which can be done to these questions. The problematic areas are main idea, specific, main idea, author's purpose, and inference based questions, because these are verbal reasoning type questions. Specific details or vocabulary based questions are often quite easy for somebody who has a decent grasp over vocabulary, and specific details are questions which are directly from the passage. Okay, so let's take the questions one by one. A very, very common type of question is, what is the main idea of this passage? So, for identifying what is the main idea of any passage, you have to understand what are the key words in this passage. For example, if I use certain words like patriotism, freedom, struggle, oppression, um, satyagraha, you automatically know we are talking maybe about the Indian freedom struggle, right? These are words which you would associate with the Indian freedom struggle. So even when reading the passage, when certain words jump out at you, those words can often define what is the content, what is the main idea of the passage. Remember, there are certain words which signal that the sentence containing them is actually a contrarian sentence, right? So if a sentence contains the words like but, yet, although, since, except, moreover, unless, nonetheless, however, what is common to all these words is that they signal shifts. I am a good man. However, so you know what, whatever I'm going to say next is going to prove that I'm not good. She is an intelligent girl, but, so now you know whatever I'm going to say next is going to prove something which is against her intelligence, right? So be very, very careful of such sentences. Don't pick up keywords from sentences containing this shift words and think that they are the main idea. They could be a wrong idea, right? So wrong answers can be spotted by identifying, is it following the main theme of the passage or is it following from a line which is actually a shifted line, and that will help you eliminate the wrong answers. So how are wrong answers created, right? See, a question paper setter is also human, and there are a limited number of strategies which they can also use for creating the options. So when a question paper setter is creating a question, he created the right answer. Now एक ऑप्शन तो राइट क्रिएट कर दिया है, बाकी के तीन या चार ऑप्शंस क्रिएट करने जो रॉन्ग है. सो हाउ वुड सच ऑप्शंस बी क्रिएटेड? So one, a wrong answer is sometimes too broad, which means too many details are covered in that. Like if I give you a passage about say Mahatma Gandhi, and my question is, what is the name of Gandhiji's wife? You have one option which says Gandhiji's wife was Kasturba. You have another passage which says Gandhiji's wife was Kasturba and his mother's name was Putlibai and his father's name was Karamchand. So a question is very specific, but if the answer contains too much of information which is not even asked in that specific question, then that particular option may not be the right answer. So if you feel that an option is giving you information more than what is asked, don't be happy. Excess information is not a good thing, right? Between two options, if one is very specific and to the point of what is asked and the other contains extra unasked for data, eliminate the extra one. The opposite is also true. Sometimes they may be asking you three specific points in the question, and one of the options would give all 3 points, and the other would only talk about two of them. So, if there is an option which is not covering every single point which is being asked in the question, then that is too small an option and needs to be eliminated. Next, sometimes you may have an irrelevant option, and this is very often easily understood by students when they say sir answer समझ में नहीं आ रहा है. 90% of the times if you are reading an option and your English is reasonably good but that particular sentence does not seem to make sense to you, 90% of the time it has been purposely created to simply confuse and waste time. It may not be the right answer, right? And remember, many a times I have asked you this question, do you know what is the time? And for someone who says the time is 8 o'clock, they are wrong. I did not ask you what is the time, right? मैंने ये नहीं पूछा कि कितने बजे हैं. My question was, क्या आपको पता है कितने बजे हैं? So the only valid options as answer is either yes or no. एग्जाम के क्वेश्चन में भी यही देखो, is the answer answering exactly what is asked or is it giving you some answer to some other question? So if the answer is not relevant to the question, eliminate it. Obviously incorrect answers are things which simply distort facts. पूछा है कि गांधी कौन से शहर में पैदा हुए, पैसेज में भी दिया है पोरबंदर एंड ऑप्शन में है भावनगर. That's not the answer, right? So any answer which is against the given facts is obviously not the right one. Eliminate those, easiest to eliminate. Sometimes the facts are distorted, sometimes the logic does not make sense, right? Reading the option, why should we why should we fight with non-violence? We should fight with non-violence because non-violence saves blood. Now, some stupid answer like that, and you it makes no sense or it is illogical, then again that answer is out, right? So these are some of the ways that you can eliminate options. Keep looking at what is the specific question to be answered and only pick that answer which is exact and to the point. Anything extra, anything less, anything missing, anything wrong, anything illogical, and that particular option is out. Also, unless it is a question of GK and current affairs, you cannot select an answer which is not supported by facts given in the passage. If they ask you to make use of common knowledge, then you can use knowledge which is not mentioned in the passage. But in most of the questions, they do not expect you to think outside the given information. In that case, you can eliminate an option if it is correct but not supported by the information given to you in the passage. Correct? That again is a common mistake which I have seen many students make. कि सर but reality में तो ऐसा ही होता है, reality में होता होगा, but you are expected to answer the question purely relying on the information which is given to you in the passage. So any option which may be true but not supported by the passage has to be eliminated. Okay. Specific detailed questions are those simple questions. Name of a person from the passage, name of a place, a date, time, figure. So all you need to do is quickly identify what type of information you're looking for, search for that particular word in the passage, right? If you get the sentence, read the sentence before and after also and answer, right? So specific detailed questions are easiest ones. Most of the time students get them right. Okay. Now, remember, specific detailed questions can also be in the form of synonyms, right? Or idioms and phrases. So don't expect a direct answer to always be there. Sometimes you may have to think a little bit, apply your knowledge of vocabulary to get it, but still, direct answers are the easiest ones. Okay. Purpose of the author. Again, it's a critical reasoning type question. Again, a type of question which gives problem to many students. So, author's purpose क्या होता है? There will be certain clue words which will help you identify the purpose. Why is the author writing this particular passage? Right? So I'm going to give you different types of clues and explain to you how to interpret those clues and which particular purpose can be satisfied by them. First one, if the author wants to show similarities between ideas, then we say that the purpose of the author is to compare. Now, how do I know that the purpose of the author is comparison? You will get words such as both, similarly, in the same way, like, just as. The moment you read such words again and again in the passage, you know that the author is making comparisons between two or more objects, right? So if a passage contains more of such words, then it could be that the author is trying to compare certain things. The opposite of a comparison is a contrast. So instead of similarities, if the author wants to point out dissimilarities, differences between things, then you will often get words such as however, but, dissimilarly, on the other hand. So frequent usage of such words in the passage could indicate that the author is trying to contrast between ideas. So compare is similarities, contrast is differences. Then when do we say that the author is criticizing something? So, trying to give a negative opinion of an idea is criticism. And you will get a lot of negative words, judgmental words, bad, wasteful, poor. All these are negative words, right? So, whenever you get a lot of negative or judgmental words, then the author's purpose may be to criticize something. If the author simply wants to show you an idea in detail, right? They want to give you a description. For example, you have gone to the India Pakistan match to watch it in the stadium, and you come back and you want to describe. So how would you explain or describe what you saw live at the stadium, right? So you will get a lot of adjectives and adverbs. So a lot of what are adjectives? Specific words which add meaning to a noun. It is a table, big table. This is a chair, a soft chair. So words which qualify nouns or adverbs qualify an action, right? She sang. How did she sing? She sang melodiously. So when a lot of adjectives and adverbs are part of the passage, then the author's purpose may be simply to describe or illustrate something. Then an explanation is when the author is trying to use simple words in order to simplify a difficult concept. And a classic way to look at an explanatory passage is simply to look at any school textbook, right? In school textbooks, especially things like science, they might try to use simple words to explain difficult concepts. So, when you again look at descriptive language, but all the descriptors are trying to simplify something, then the purpose of the author is to explain. And when the author is not explaining but simply listing down something, top 10 national law universities, top 10 destinations for Garba in this year, top 10 food items to eat after Navratri. So, all such things is simply a list of ideas. You may not have too much of a description about these things. Now, if an author wants to employ hyperbole, which is exaggerating something, then the purpose could be described as intensifying. So instead of saying that the baby was crying, if the author writes, the baby mournfully howling red cheeked for 30 minutes, राइट, आई कुड हैव रिटन कि बच्चा रो रहा था, नहीं, बच्चा सिसक सिसक के समुद्र की तरह आंसुओं से झरने बहा रहा था. सो इफ यू यूज वेरी डिस्क्रिप्टिव एंड फ्लावरी लैंग्वेज, then you are trying to intensify an idea. The opposite of criticism could also be taken as suggestion. If the author wants to give a positive opinion about something, that means they're trying to suggest. For example, if I want to suggest that you buy this particular brand of ice cream, right? Obviously, if I'm trying to sell that ice cream to you, I will use all positive words for it, all positive opinions for it. I will try to give you more details which will help you make the choice. So, a detailed, usually positive opinion and description about something means the author is trying to suggest a particular idea, right? Now, author's purpose के अलावा भी you have a type of question where they are trying to identify the tone of the passage, right? Mood क्या है passage का? Passage में कौन सा feeling आ रहा है? So, tone of the passage is obviously depending on the attitude and the emotion, and it's a very subjective thing. But I'll try to put a list of some common tones. So, supposing while reading a passage, you obviously understand that it is very one sided, it is not giving you a neutral opinion, and you get the feeling that the author is favoring one over the other, then such a tone is called a biased tone. When you do not go equal amount of pros and cons, when it is too many pros or too many cons, then the author could be biased for or biased against. The tone is a biased tone. If you get complex writing, but it tells you a lot about feelings, right? A lot of words which indicate feelings are present. The tone of the passage could be emotional. If the author is trying to examine themselves, what their own actions are, they're trying to understand their own feelings, then the word that we use is introspective. So introspection is trying to identify your own feelings, trying to self examine. Praising something we use the word laudatory, to applaud, right? It comes from the word to laud. To laud is to praise. So laudatory is praising something, किसी की वाहवाही करना. If you do not know the facts, but you are trying to guess what it is, you are trying to explain something theoretically, you are trying to get an expert's opinion about something, then such a passage could be speculative. A speculation is a guess. You don't have the exact facts with you, but you are trying to guess what it could be. If that is the tone of the passage, we call such a passage as being a speculative passage. Then, if there is too much of technical writing, technical terms and jargon, things which are not based on emotions or feelings, things which are not based on opinion, but things which have a lot of facts and figures, then such a writing is simply called a technical writing. Right? These are just a few examples of different tones. I'll put up an entire passage. I have a PDF with a lot of different tones explained in them. I'm going to share that particular thing on the app. You will find it under study material. So under study material, I will put up a folder of named CLAT Crash 23, and all the material which I refer to in the class or I make, like I mentioned some reading comprehension passages. I'm talking about the tones of the passage. All this content I'll put together in a single folder. So under study material, I'll create a folder. You'll get it in a day or two. Just go through the crash 2023 folder and you'll get it. I've not created it yet. You will get access to it in a day or two. Okay. So the basic reading comprehension strategy, and not just for reading comprehension, but for any passage based question, is I always recommend to read the questions first. Now, when we practice in class, because I'm limited by technology, so I have to show you the passage first and then the questions. But in any examination, when you have the entire question paper in your hand, my recommendation, read the questions first, so you know what you are trying to look for in the passage. Once you have read the question, read the passage. Once you have read the passage and when you are solving the questions, make sure you eliminate as many wrong answers as possible and then select the correct one. I keep telling this, I repeat once again. This is not like maths where if one option is correct, others are automatically false. This is not like GK current affairs where if one answer is right, the others are automatically false. In any language based question, multiple options could be right, but you cannot mark more than one answer. In that case, you will have to decide which is the best of all the answers and go with that. And if all the answers are bad, then you will have to select which is the least bad answer. So don't simply mark the first option that you have read unless you have read the other options and eliminated them successfully. So I'm going to show you a few passages for practice. Here's the first passage on the screen. Very short passage. Read it and then we'll take a look at the questions. Give me a heads up when you are done reading. Done, 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 done. Great. Okay. So the passage is pretty simple. It says, in our approach to life, be it pragmatic or otherwise. Now, can somebody tell me what is the meaning of the word pragmatic? Anybody? Vocabulary is absolutely important. So, what does pragmatic mean? Practical or logical, sensible, correct. So pragmatic means a logical, it's not emotional, it's not based on feelings. A pragmatic approach means you are very practical, you are very logical. So whatever is your आपकी life के बारे में जो भी नजरिया हो, whether you think logically or not, but one basic thing is that everybody wants peace, security, and happiness. Different forms of life at different levels of existence make up the teeming denizens of this earth of ours. What is meant by teeming denizens? Denizens and teeming. What do these two words mean? So, denizens means things which live, like citizens of a country. So, denizens simply mean living beings of a place. So, denizens are just life forms. And teeming denizens means lots of, बहुत सारे. Teeming means plenty of. So there are different living things on this earth, different levels, right? Some of them are high level living beings like human beings, some of them are low level things like animals. But whether you are an intelligent creature like a human being or whether you are a very basic creature, an animal, every life wants peace, comfort, and security. Life is dear, right? Even mute creatures को life जिंदगी उतनी ही प्यारी है जितने human beings को. Even the lowliest insect strives for protection against dangers that threaten life. Just as each of us wants to live and not to die, so do all other creatures. So it talks about what all is necessary for human beings is also things which other animals also want to wish for. Simple, basic 3 or 4 lines. I hope everybody understood the basic meaning of this passage. If yes, then let's take a look at question which can be asked. This should be easy. So, one thing when we were reading the passage, what were the keywords? The keywords which got repeated was peace, security, right? Peace and security were the words which were used multiple times in the passage. So, the and it made a comparison between human beings and other life forms as well. So, one, different forms of life are found on earth. That is a point in the passage, but it is not the main point of the passage. Different levels of existence are possible. Again, that is not the main theme of the passage. Third, peace and security are the chief goals of all living beings. It could be my answer. And even the weakest creature struggles to preserve its life. Now, D may seem like an answer to somebody, but if you think about it carefully, the main point of the passage is not that weak creatures are struggling. The main point is everybody, whether you are weak or you're strong, wants to survive, right? So A and B are clearly not the main point of the passage, and D is not the main point because it does not take into existence that even the strong beings have the same goals as the weak ones. So obviously C is my answer in this case. For somebody who asked me how do I eliminate, this is a very very simple example, but the same process I usually follow for every question. Do you understand the process of elimination which I used to derive C? Now, in the heat of the exam, आप इतना धीरे नहीं करने वाले. You are going to look at it and instantly process it and tick mark the answer. But practicing like this will get you that speed of elimination. I hope that helps. Okay. Now, something is missing in this. I'll eliminate this. Okay. Now let's take another passage. Let's take another passage. This is slightly longer than the previous one. Give me a heads up when you're done. Dwindled. So dwindled means reduced, right? The number of tigers in our country is dwindling. Means it is becoming lesser and lesser. It's an interesting passage. It says literature and history are inseparable. उनको अलग नहीं किया जा सकता. But during the times of olden generation, our grandfathers, education was based on two things. If you are an educated person, then you learn from the Greek and Roman classics. But if you are not an educated person, you can still learn simply from the Bible, right? So whether it was the Greek and Roman authors or whether it is the Bible, in these things, history and literature were very closely related. So because of this, the imagination and thought of our ancestors who studied either from the classics or the Bible, they were with that. So because reading the Bible and reading the classical authors, by doing this, you are learning both history and literature of the three greatest races of the ancient world. Now, it says that no doubt the classics and the Bible were read in a manner we now consider uncritical. What do you mean by that? Uncritical means you do not question it. You read whatever is there and accept it as if it is the truth and cannot be challenged. So the author says that in those times, people used to read these things and accept it without questioning it. But they were read according to the best tenets of the time and formed a great humanistic education. He says today we do not, today when we read something, we always challenge it. We question it. Okay, is this right or is this wrong? But in that time, in old days, when people only had either Greek and Roman classics or the Bible, whatever they read, they would consider it to be the truth. They would never question it. राइट जो भी लिखा है वो हमेशा सही है उस जमाने में वही सोचते थे बट इट वॉज नॉट राइट उस जमाने की सोच की हिसाब से रीडिंग दैट वॉज करेक्ट राइट today if somebody reads something and does not question it we say that the person is not having a good education but in that time in the olden days it was not nobody used to think that we should challenge what we are reading so people used to simply read and believe and that was considered to be okay according to that time. Today, the study both of classics and Bible has dwindled to small proportions. So, in olden times, lot of people, in fact, a majority of the studies was only of the Bible or of these classical books. But today, not many people study the classics, not many people study the Bible. In fact, the study of both the things has become very less. Why? What has taken their place? So, to some extent, the vacuum has been filled by a more correct knowledge of history and a wider range of literature. तो हिस्ट्री उस जमाने में जो लिखा था वो शायद गलत भी हो सकता था बट टुडे मेनी हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट्स वी नो which are correct and today we have got a wide range of literature in that times there were hardly a few books of literature today there are literally lakhs and lakhs of books but I fear that the greater part of it has been filled up with rubbish. Today we have a lot of writing, a lot of literature, but a lot of that literature is not a classical one or a good one. बकवास किताबें भर भर के आज अवेलेबल है पुराने जमाने में नॉट मेनी पीपल यूज टू राइट तो जो भी लिखते थे बढ़िया होता था आजकल तो हर कोई लिख सकता है तो इतना पढ़ने को बहुत कुछ मिलता है लेकिन उसमें से मोस्ट ऑफ कचरा माल है इट्स नॉट गुड रीडिंग Now, did you get the passage more or less? Then let's take a look at the question. Which of the following statement best reflects the underlying tone of the passage? We know it is about literature and history, right? We also know that they are talking about how literature and history were originally from the classics and the Bible only. So, first option, literature and history are mutually exclusive. क्या पैसेज में ऐसा कहा गया है कि लिटरेचर एंड हिस्ट्री का आपस में कोई रिलेशन ही नहीं है? म्यूचुअली एक्सक्लूसिव मींस अनकनेक्टेड. आर दे अनकनेक्टेड? नो. In fact, they say literature and history are very closely connected. So A cannot be my answer. Does it say literature and history are complementary to each other? एक की कमी क्या दूसरा पूरी करता है? The passage does not say that one completes the other. So not B. Study of literature is meaningless without knowledge of history. No, it does not say that you must know one or study one to understand the other. So, fourth, literature and history are inseparably linked together in classics and Bible. Right? Tone of the passage means something which is throughout the passage. And throughout the passage, they have mentioned classics and Bible so many times. So, more or less, that has to be part of the answer. So, obviously, my best option in this case has to be D. Correct? Everybody? Chalo. Now, the author of the above passage says that in the past, the basis of education for all people, irrespective of their intellectual caliber, was what? Now, this is a direct question, right? For people, very clearly he has mentioned that if you were an educated person, then you got the education from the Greeks and Roman classics. But if you were not educated or educated, it did not matter. For all, the source of education was always the Bible. Very clearly mentioned in the passage. We directly lift karo answer passage mein se. Now, the author of the above passage says that the classics and the Bible were read by his ancestors. Again, I've explained this particular thing and it is also directly there from the passage. So, this now you should be able to answer. The difference between how we read and how the ancestors read. पूर्वज जो भी पढ़ते थे उसका उस पर सवाल नहीं उठाते थे. जो पढ़ लिया वो सच है मान के पढ़ते थे. रिमेंबर दैट. No critics, no criticism. So, did the ancestors read methodically with discretion? With discretion means ध्यान देके सोच समझ के? नहीं. In a manner that broadened their view of life. ऐसे पढ़ते थे कि जिंदगी का नया मतलब समझ में आ गया? No. Great emphasis on literary value. जो पढ़ते थे उसके लिटरेचर की वाहवाही करते थे? No. Without critical discrimination. In fact, passage में clearly दिया गया है. They used to read it without in a non-critical, uncritical way. So वो critical words ही पता चल जाएगा. Answer to this definitely has to be D. Correct. Now, according to the author of the above passage, old form of education based on the study of classics and of the Bible has, and somebody asked me a specific word का मतलब, वो word से ही आंसर आता है इसका. Dwindling का मतलब क्या है? Somebody had asked me, right? And I said dwindling means reducing. And the word dwindling was used in this context. Okay, जो पुराना स्टाइल ऑफ पढ़ने का है वो कम होता जा रहा है. So, according to the author, the old form of education is gradually declining. Anushka, rejuvenated means it has again been brought back to life. To rejuvenate something means to bring back to life, but it is the opposite of that. The old style of studying is actually going down. It is declining. It is dwindling. The word dwindling has been used. So D cannot be my answer, right? It has to be C. Very clearly, it mentions that in the passage. Okay. And let's take one last question. The author of the above passage fears that the greater part of the vacuum created by lack of interest in classics and the Bible has been filled up by what? लास्ट लाइन के अंदर है ये पैसेज में, वो कहता है कि बहुत सारी चीजें आजकल पढ़ने को मिलती हैं लेकिन मोस्ट ऑफ देम इज बकवास. सो द ऑथर फियर्स that, so you see, even without reading the passage, if you want to answer this question, you can actually answer it. Let's see how to answer this question even without reading the passage. When you read that the question says the author of the passage fears means डर लगना, right? अब अच्छी चीजों से तो डर नहीं लगेगा, right? So can you be afraid of new philosophy of life? No. Can you be afraid of a rich sense of history? No. Can you be afraid of a wider range of literature? No. So obviously, the only thing which you can be afraid of are worthless ideas. So worthless ideas has to be my answer. Harman, vacuum means स्पेस के अंदर जहां पे कुछ भी नहीं होता, हवा भी नहीं होती, उसको वैक्यूम बोलते हैं. आई डोंट नो व्हाट टू कॉल इट इन हिंदी और गुजराती, बट फुग्गे में से हवा निकाल दो तो जो कुछ भी नहीं रहता, जहां पे हवा भी नहीं होती, दैट इज वैक्यूम. Okay, so vacuum here means emptiness. And even without reading the passage, if you want to guess the answer, you can, because you read that the author fears something. So you should automatically understand you can only fear a negative concept. You cannot fear something which is positive. And A, B, and C are all positive options. So you have to go with D, the negative option. So even without reading the passage, such questions can be answered. Got that, everyone? Chalo. So that pretty much brings me to the end of today's session. I hope everybody paid attention, especially to that part where I talked about analysis of different mocks. So if you have given the mocks, please sit and analyze them properly. Prepare a list of your strengths and weaknesses and start working on it. There is no harm in re-attempting the older mocks as well, right? So the oldest mock which you have with you, re-attempt it. If your analysis is proper, you should be able to score significantly more. But if you are not able to do so, that means you have not analyzed the paper, right? Like I said, I will be putting up a folder in the study material section of the law batch on the app, and you will be able to access a lot of content in terms of reading comprehension passages and tips and tricks. Please use them diligently. And if you have any questions, you can always use the chat facility on the app to send them to me. Let's make the best use of these final days. Let's make our preparation up to the mark and let's crack the exams, right? So if there are any questions, you can hang around and ask. Otherwise, we are done for the day. You may exit the session. We will catch up again tomorrow. Tomorrow, most probably maths, but I'll check. We'll be catching up daily evening 7:30 on Zoom.